David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have. Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation interacts with his unique body chemistry. And now when David Banner grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs. The creature is driven by rage and pursued by an investigative reporter.
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Accidental explosion took the life of a fellow scientist and supposedly David Banner as well. The reporter thinks the creature was responsible.
I gave a description to all the law enforcement agencies. They got a warrant for murder out of him.
A murder which David Banner can never prove he or the creature didn't commit. So he must let the world go on thinking that he too is dead, until he can find a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him.
Hey, what time is it?
It's Podblast time. Yes, it's Podblast time. A quick supplemental to the live show that we did earlier today with Al Hardee and Tom Williams, a.k.a. Basil Chesterman. There were a couple clips I couldn't play for technical reasons that I want to play now, featuring actress Catherine Mary Stewart, whom was in town here in Atlanta, Georgia, for a special screening of The Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet. The Night of the Comet screening was Friday night at the Sandy Springs Cinema and Taphouse, known as The Springs, which is a lavish movie theater in the metropolitan Atlanta, Georgia area with a full bar, state-of-the-art seats. It's just quite an experience, and they have great food, and they have special events like the one that I attended representing your nostalgic Podblast. So I don't want to take away from the earlier live show today, and I'm not going to be very long. But also I want to touch on the series She-Hulk, which has been very contentious with fanboys and fangirls alike. There's been a lot of negativity about it. Hopefully people stuck with it and watched it to the end. If you're a nerd like me and you've read the old comic books like what's on camera now, by the way, if you're listening at fistfulofradio.com or Apple or TuneIn, wherever you might be listening, I would encourage you to go to the Nostalgic Podblast YouTube channel and click subscribe, and you can see the comic books I'm going to feature tonight in this very brief supplemental to today's live show that I did with Al and Tom. And on camera right now, you'll see Sensational She-Hulk issue number 1, and that was released in January 1989. And that was the second attempt at a comic book based on that character, She-Hulk. Some backstory on that character. The first comic book was titled Savage She-Hulk, and that was released back in November 1979 with the February 1980 cover date. So the character's been around a long time, for decades, and there's been a misconception that, you know, it's a gender bender Disney Plus series, and no, this character's been around for a long, long time. Basically, it was a struggle between Marvel and Universal Television to create a female Hulk character. Marvel was scared that Universal would spin off the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk TV show and spin off a female character that they would own the rights to, the merchandising rights, toys, all that sort of stuff, which Universal had already done, spinning off the $6 million Man with the Bionic Woman. So there was a real concern. Now, how does this relate? I'm going to tie it all together briefly to She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and the great epic season finale, which was the 9th episode of season 1, and season 2 has already been greenlit and announced there will be a season 2. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a comedy. And even if you hate comic books and sci-fi, I think you could appreciate this series if you have Disney Plus. But I want to quickly play a little game. I played this game, Brand or Brand X, with Al and Tom, and in case you missed it, I'm just going to go into a little more detail of these characters. Now, this is the superhero and pulp character edition of Brand or Brand X, and the whole concept of the game is just there's two characters that are very similar in nature, and you decide which came first. No cheating, no Google cheating. You decide in your mind which character came first. Let's start with this question. I'm going to mention this character because he's in Werewolf by Night, which is also on Disney Plus. It's a 55-minute standalone movie for the Halloween 2022 season and beyond that was really, really well done. And it's in black and white for the most part. And they did a fantastic job with that. Well, in that, here's a minor spoiler. In Werewolf by Night, we meet for the first time in the MCU, the Marvel Comics universe, live action, not a comic book, but a live action production, not a cartoon. We met Man-Thing. Now, Man-Thing is a human being who's part human and part vegetation or plant, kind of like Swamp Thing. So the question is, who was first? Swamp Thing by DC Comics or Man-Thing published by Marvel Comics? Think about that for a second. Now, there was a movie, Swamp Thing. An actor, Dick Durock, played the title character in his plant-like form. And actually, Netflix did a pretty good updated version of Swamp Thing back in 2019 that actually went to mainstream television, too, during the pandemic. Well, I'll tell you, Man-Thing was actually first. So Marvel struck first with this character. And the roots, no pun intended, the Man-Thing go back to 1960. Talk about that in a second. And then we'll get to some audio, which was not featured earlier, of Catherine Mary Stewart doing a question and answer session, including when I asked her a question that I recorded. And hopefully the audio will be decent enough. And it should be, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll be clear enough where you can hear her responses. So, but getting to Man-Thing. Well, Man-Thing was created by writer Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Jerry Conway, and artist Gray Morrow. And the character first appeared in a Marvel magazine called Savage Tales, #1. And on the cover, you see Conan O'Brien holding a severed head, which they actually depicted that scene in the movie Conan the Barbarian starring Arnold Schwarzenegger back in 1981. And the Man-Thing, he's a cursed character, just like the Swamp Thing. He's cursed to be a monster. So Savage Tales issue 1 actually hit the stands on February 1971. And that was a black and white magazine, and it wasn't censored. It was an uncensored magazine. The comic books were censored by the Comics Code Authority. God bless America. Someone's calling in. Let's see. Let's see if this guy wants to talk on the air. Hey, you're on the air, Nostalgic Podblast. You're live. What's up?
Oh, hey.
Hey, man.
What's going on?
Not much. We're just talking about who came first, Swamp Thing or Man-Thing.
Well, hell, I don't know.
Well, hey, man.
Swamp Thing, probably, right?
No, sir. Man-Thing. Hey, I was wondering, real quick, I'm just going to divert from this game for a second while you're on the line. We're all a little upset that the Braves didn't advance and the Dodgers were knocked out. This is going to date this little supplement. We're in, towards the end of October 2022. But how about that game between Alabama and Tennessee? That was a huge upset and a great game.
Yeah, that was amazing. Did you hear what they did with the goalpost?
No, I was busy. Tell us.
They uprooted the goalpost and put it in the Tennessee River, which I don't really understand the whole reasoning behind that. But, yeah, they uprooted the goalpost and a lot of people, a lot of manpower had to take it to the Tennessee River, which is right nearby, and they threw it in the Tennessee River.
Damn, that
was their celebration, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, UT, yeah. Man, I remember just a few years ago, Tennessee sucked. Their football program was in the toilet. Not anymore.
They've come a long way. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're talking about pop culture. Let's see. I went to a screening. Do you remember the movie The Last Starfighter?
Yes.
Right, and it was kind of like a commercial for a video game that Atari was going to release in arcades. And I met one of the stars, and I'm going to play some audio of her and a question and answer I had with her and others had with her at the Springs Cinema and Tap House. Her name's Mary Stewart. She also starred in Night of the Comet. She was in Weekend at Bernie's and some other movies, and she looks fantastic to this day. Beautiful lady.
Yes.
Anyway.
So, wait, was there a question?
No, I literally was wondering if you remembered that movie. Because it did well, but it wasn't like a blockbuster like an Indiana Jones or Star Wars. But it did make money. It made like $14 million in North America alone.
I saw that in the movie theater, like when I was a child, like probably 1983.
1984, close. July 84 is when it was released. I did too. I saw it in the theater a couple times.
Yes, I remember that because that was like when E.T. was out, maybe a little after E.T.
Now, speaking of video games, and you're a buddy of mine, this is Hunter. You were just calling me to chit-chat. You didn't know I was going to go live. I'm just doing a supplemental. I already did a show with Al and Tom earlier today. This is a supplement. But speaking of video games, and I talked about this last time, with HowlGolson.com, professional artist with Paul Newman and Adult Swim. Anyway, and you guys have been playing the Friday the 13th game from a few years ago, which actually uncovers the origin of Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother, how she was sadly raped. This is all fiction, folks, of course. It's not real. But supposedly Jason's father was just some random psychopath, and she killed his ass. And that's where the murdering began in that fictional storyline, in that arc.
Yeah, I've continued. My brother is more knowledgeable about it than I am, of course, but because he's been playing the game longer than I have. But I continue to find like Easter eggs that give you a little trivia about like the characters and everything.
All right.
It is very interesting. Very, very interesting to play. PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4. They're both the game's on both of those consoles.
And it's new to me. I mean, like Howell explained, it's been out for a little while. I referred to it as a brand new game, but for those in the know, it's been out a minute.
It has been out a minute. I think like 2 years possibly. But
that's cool.
Now they're coming out with a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that'll be out in early 2023.
Yeah, you're excited about that. You told me offline. Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah.
And as we're live, it's almost November 2022. I cannot believe how fast this year has gone by.
I know. It's blowing by. Time flies, man.
It does. And you're a huge Braves fan, so I know you're very disappointed in the Phillies knocking out the Braves, but I'm going to support the team that knocked out the Braves. If it got down to it, I'm going to root for the Phillies to win the World Series if they advance past the NLCS.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But yeah, because our friend Sean, he lives out in San Diego, Sean Gardner. I probably shouldn't say his name. But anyway, I kind of like the Padres, to be honest. I kind of like.
They're a cleaner looking club. The guys, they got some rough looking characters on the Phillies. I mean, I don't like to judge a book by its cover, but there's Mullet City and beards and just, it looks like a real motley crew in that dugout.
Yeah, it seems like a little sketchy out there in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's like they recruited in prisons or something.
Yeah, they let all the convicts out.
I mean, a lot of those guys look like they could be murderers in Texas Chainsaw Massacre themselves.
Yeah, they could be stand-in for some of those movies.
Well, listen, I'll call you after I'm live. I got to get back to the pop culture stuff. But is there anything you want to add about, I don't know, The Last Starfighter or well, you didn't watch She-Hulk. I wish I could rap to you about that. That's what I was going to briefly talk about. The finale was excellent. I think you would have liked it. I mean, I know it sounds lame, right? She-Hulk, we're men. But it was actually really good and funny.
Well, okay. Well, I'm about to I just got my new TV. I'm about to subscribe to Disney Plus.
Good.
So I'll be able to catch up on all that, but I know I'm not very knowledgeable about that at this juncture.
It's all good. Well, listen, man, you have a good night, and I'll call you back after I'm done with this live supplement.
All right. Sounds good, man. I didn't mean to break up your show.
No, that's okay, and I didn't mean to blindside you by just saying, hey, man, you're live. What you got? What's up?
I know.
All right.
Times, man.
All right, man. I'll call you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hunter Golson, he's a buddy of mine, obviously. All right, so getting back to Brand or Brand X, who was first, Swamp Thing or Man Thing? I already revealed. Man Thing came first, created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, spelled Gerry. Might be pronounced Jerry Conway, Jerry or Gary, I don't know. I should know, but I don't know. And artist Gray Morrow, and like I said, the character first appeared in that very adult Marvel magazine, Savage Tales 1, which only lasted one issue. And the calendar date, or street date, was February 1971. And the character went on to be featured in regular comic books, censored, if you will, comic books, starting with Adventure into Fear, issue number 10, which I have. I didn't pull it. I'm going to show you some She-Hulk comics tonight. If you're listening, again, go to the YouTube channel, The Nostalgic Podblast, please, if you want to see the collectibles I'm going to display. And I'll play some audio clips while I'm doing that, so that for just the listeners, it won't be a total tune-out when I'm focusing on showing a show-and-tell session of my comics related to She-Hulk. And last time I showed you some of the comics about Man-Thing and some of the horror comics. And by the way, that Savage Tales #1 was a black and white book. It wasn't in color, and yeah, Adventure into Fear was the first comic book. So DC's character Swamp Thing, who also was a humanoid / plant elemental creature, was created by writer Len Wein, last name spelled Wein. And he's also credited for creating the character of Wolverine, which first debuted in the Incredible Hulk comic book in 1974 in issue 180 in the last panel, but all the collectors really want issue 181 because that's the first full comic book that featured Wolverine, the mutant with adamantium as a skeleton and the claws and all that, played by Hugh Jackman in the movies. And he's going to be in Deadpool 3, as most people know. Let's see. So Swamp Thing, yeah, Len Wein, and the artist was Bernie Wrightson, 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 Bernie Wrightson. They're the creators of Swamp Thing. And the character first appeared in a comic book by DC Comics titled House of Secrets, issue number 92. And that was released to the public in April 1971, 2 full months after the Man-Thing hit the scene in Savage Tales magazine issue number 1, the only issue they published of that title. But the origin of Man-Thing goes back to 1960, actually. This was a concept in Tales of Suspense, and a lot of people will remember, even if you're not a comic book nerd like me, you may know this, maybe you're not, but you're going to know now. I'm going to just tell you. Issue 39 of that book was the first appearance of Iron Man. And he had a gray armor suit originally. Then in the very next issue, issue 40, the suit went to gold. And that was an anthology title, Tales of Suspense was, published by the predecessor of Marvel Comics. And it was just a bunch of different stories. Horror, monsters, and then they branched out into superheroes around that time. But Tales of Suspense issue 7 from January of 1960 also featured the concept of a man becoming a plant creature. So, you know, even though on paper it looks like Swamp Thing got beaten by Man-Thing by 2 months, really it goes back about 10 years before the character debuted. So question 2 out of 4, who was first of 2 similar characters in comic book lore and pulp lore in movies and serials. Well, question 2, who was first, Aquaman or Submariner? Both characters are sea-dwelling leaders who command creatures of the sea. Generation Xers like me will remember the silly, cheesy Superfriends cartoon with Aquaman. He'd be riding like a giant like horseshoe under the sea. Now, Submariner on the Marvel side is the Prince. Prince Namor. Imperious Rex is the character's name. Well, have you decided? I haven't looked at comments yet, but have you decided who's first? Submariner or Aquaman? Well, believe it or not, it was Submariner. He debuted back in 1939, the same year that DC released Batman and Bruce Wayne onto the public in Detective Comics issue 27. Well, the predecessor of Marvel in that same year, 1939, a year after Superman debuted in 1938, an artist and writer named Bill Everett introduced the character of Submariner for a comic book packager named Funnies Incorporated. And the character of Submariner initially was created for an unreleased comic titled Motion Picture Funnies Weekly. But officially, the character of Submariner first appeared publicly in Marvel Comics #1. Now, the company was not called Marvel Comics for many, many years after 1939, but the cover date was October 1939, where on a national level, Submariner was introduced to the world and to readers. And that was the first comic book published by Timely Comics, which was the 1930s to 1940s predecessor of Marvel Comics. Timely and then Atlas and then Marvel Comics. And during that time period, known to historians and fans as the golden age of comic books during the World War II era, the Submariner was one of Timely's top 3 characters, along with Captain America, who in his first issue, Captain America #1 from the 1940, he's bopping Adolf Hitler right in the face. It's just an iconic cover. It might have been 1941. I'm a Silver Age comic book collector, not Golden Age, so cut me some slack on that. And then the third character was the original Human Torch, who was a robot, not to be confused with Johnny Blaze from the Fantastic Four, who was a human who was transformed into a Human Torch by cosmic rays on a space flight with his sister and future brother-in-law and Ben Grimm, who became the Thing. The big pile of... at first he was muddy, and then he became a pile of rocks as he evolved. I won't say he mutated, because he wasn't a mutant. But Submariner was a mutant. He was a mutant son of a human sea captain and a princess of the mythical undersea kingdom of Atlantis. And Prince Namor will be introduced in Wakanda Forever, the sequel to the Black Panther. And they're going to pick up where Chadwick Boseman left off when he sadly passed away. The torch will be passed onto another actor and another character. And that will be released in early November 2022. But some of the powers of Prince Namor, he possesses the super strength and aquatic abilities of a, this is not a joke, I'm just reading facts, of a race. I won't even say it because you'll think I'm making a joke here. Homo mormanus race, as well as the mutant ability of flight. He has little wings on his shins, along with other superhuman powers like super strength. But through the years, Submariner has been portrayed as an anti-hero because he wants revenge. When he saw what happened to Atlantis, he noticed it was destroyed when he was brought back by Stan Lee in early 1962 in Fantastic Four issue #4, decades after the World War II era, by Bill Everett. Stan Lee brought the character back, and in that storyline in the Fantastic Four, he was horrified by what mankind, in his mind, had done to Atlantis, stealing her treasures and laying waste to his land. But he is a good-natured but short-fused superhero, and he wants revenge for what he perceived as wrongs by the misguided surface dwellers committed against his kingdom, Atlantis. So he's really the first known anti-hero, if you will, in comic book lore. And the Submariner has remained a historically important and relatively popular Marvel character. And he has served directly with the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the Invaders, which took place in World War II era, the Defenders, X-Men, the Illuminati, as well as serving as a foil on occasion to those teams. So, and he fell in love with Susan Storm. There was a love triangle in the early Fantastic Four issues where Reed Richards, the leader of the Fantastic Four, the scientist brain, he was after Sue Storm's affections, but so was Prince Namor. And for a while, they were neck and neck. But ultimately, Reed Richards won her heart in the comic books. So, the actor who's going to portray Prince Namor in Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever, which will, again, premiere depending on when you're hearing this or watching this, on Friday, November 11th, 2022, is Tenoch Huerta. Huerta. So, getting to Aquaman, who was after Submariner, he was created by Paul Norris and Mort Weisinger. The character debuted in the title More Fun Comics, issue number 73, with a cover date of November 1941, 2 years after Submariner's premiere in Marvel Comics #1 on a national scale. Initially, he was a backup feature in DC's anthology titles. Aquaman later starred in several volumes of a solo comic book series published by DC Comics. During the late 1950s and 1960s, superhero revival period known as the Silver Age of Comics, which is what I collect, the Silver and Bronze Age, Aquaman was a founding member of the Justice League. In the 1990s modern age, writers interpreted Aquaman's character more seriously, with storylines depicting the weight of his role as the king of Atlantis. Aquaman's villains include the Black Manta, who was in the first Aquaman movie, which I liked. I thought that was one of the better DC movies, and I'm interested in the sequel, which will be released very soon. And his own half-brother, the Ocean Master, is another one of Aquaman's villains. So the character's original 1960s animated appearances left a lasting impression, making Aquaman widely recognized in pop culture as one of the world's most recognized superheroes. Jokes about his wholesome, weak portrayal in Superfriends that I talked about and perceived feeble powers and abilities have been staples of comedy programs and stand-up routines. So, question 3 of 4. This is an easy one. I won't spend a whole lot of time with this. It's kind of a no-brainer. Who came first? Who hit the scene first? Was it Superman or Spider-Man? It was Superman. Back in 1938 in Action Comics #1, where he's holding up the car. And the character was created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster. And they were just daydreaming, looking at the clouds, and they envisioned a man flying amongst the clouds when they were youngsters. And they finally got, in the 1970s, their just reward for creating Superman when the feature film Superman the Movie was released in December 1978. They received a credit and compensation, which they had been denied for many, many years. Now, on the other side, Spider-Man and the Marvel side of things, he first appeared in a comic book titled Amazing Fantasy 15, which was the last issue of that title. It originally had been titled Amazing Adult Fantasy. They changed the name and shortened it to Amazing Fantasy. And that 15th issue had several stories, and one of them was the story that introduced Spider-Man. And that hit the stands in May of 1962, actually after The Incredible Hulk, who we'll talk about in a second. I'm not done talking about She-Hulk. The Incredible Hulk street date release of Incredible Hulk issue 1 was February 1962 with a May 62 cover date. So the Hulk hit the scene first, and the monster comic books were big for the early days of Marvel. And then they stumbled across gold with the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, bringing back Thor, the Norse god of thunder in Norse mythology. So you can't really say Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created Thor. I mean, maybe the comic book adaptation, but it goes back to mythology, of course. So there you have it. Back in 1938, Superman hit the scene first, and then Spider-Man decades later. Final question. Who came first, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon? I'll pause while you think on that. Both were popular movie serials back in the 40s, and cartoon series and feature films, television shows of one of them, Buck Rogers. So which came first, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon? This goes way back. Well, the answer is Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers was a science fiction adventure hero and comic strip created by Philip Francis Nolan, spelled N-O-W-L-A-N, Nolan, N-O-W-L-A-N, first appearing in daily U.S. newspapers on Monday, January 7th, 1929. And then later appeared in Sunday newspapers, international newspapers, books, and multiple media with adaptations including in radio in 1932, a film series of serials, a television series, and other formats. Remember, Captain Video and his Video Rangers on the Honeymooners. Art Connie's character was watching that. It was kind of a similar early TV show to Buck Rogers. But I remember Norton ain't Norton. Norton liked both those shows in the Honeymooners, Classic 39, and then some of the live skits in the Jackie Gleason show. He'd have his Captain Video helmet on, and he was watching Buck Rogers as well. They referenced both of those shows. Now, the Buck Rogers strip, published from 1929 to 1967, was syndicated by John F. D-I-L-L Company. John F. Dill Company, or Dilly. I don't know how to pronounce that. Call me stupid. And it was later called the National Newspaper Syndicate. And the character of Buck Rogers was popular enough to inspire other newspaper syndicates to launch their own science fiction strips. The most famous of these imitators was Flash Gordon from King Features Syndicate from 1934 to 2003. And as I said previously, Buck Rogers hit in 1929. Other knockoffs included Brick Bradford by Central Press Association from 1933 to 1987. Wow, I can't believe it made it through the 80s, almost all the way through the 80s. I'd never heard of it. And Don Dixon and the Hidden Empire. And what about Dick Tracy? Didn't mention that with the fellas earlier today. That was a really popular strip in newspapers. Anyway, Don Dixon and the Hidden Empire, published by Watkins Syndicate from 1935 to 1941. And also there's a character named Speed Spaulding. Spaulding spelled S-P-A-U-L-D-I-N-G. Also published by John F. D-I-L-L-E Company from 1940 to 1941. Didn't last long. The Buck Rogers strip also probably inspired developing a strip based on John Carter, Warlord of Mars, for United Feature Syndicate from 1941 to 1943. Edgar Rice Burroughs created that character, John Carter, who also created, Edgar Rice Burroughs did, Tarzan the Ape Man. But that character, John Carter, was first seen back in 1912. Wow. Now, I'm going to try to play a little bit of the Buck Rogers musical theme, just a little bit of the music. Not a lot, because I think I'm going to get hit hard by the copyright Nazis. But let me just see if I can play a little bit. Oh, yeah, and I was going to play a little bit of Submariner, too, the theme to a 1966 cartoon series, which was really lame. They took panels from comic books, and they released Captain America, Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Submariner, Thor, and they had these little theme songs. But they just would move the mouths, and they literally would string along the panel from the comic book. It was literally taken from the Marvel comic books, Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, yada, yada, yada. But let me find this clip here of some of the Buck Rogers theme. Yeah, here we go. I'm just going to play a little bit. You've heard it before. It was narrated by William Conrad.
The year is 1987. The year is 1987, and NASA launches the last of one of its deep space probes. Captain William Buck Rogers is frozen. Wait for it! Da, 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 da. Enter Aaron Gray. And wouldn't we all want to if we could? Back then. And now, no. I'm sorry, family show. Anyway, you get the idea of that. That's the theme music by Stu Phillips, who did a lot of the music for prolific producer, and some would say rip-off artist, who's no longer with us, Glenn A. Larson. I did an over 6-hour documentary on Glenn Larson not too long ago in the nostalgic Podblast, with a lot of clips, a lot of audio of Glenn in his own words, and people that work with him. He was a great, underrated producer and musician, but I digress. So that was some of the theme to the Buck Rogers television show, which actually was released as a feature film back in 1979, and it did all right. It was in the wake of the success of Star Wars at the box office. All of a sudden, outer space was in. You had all of these knockoffs, movies made in Italy, all over the world. Outer space was so hip. Even James Bond diverted course. Instead of For Your Eyes Only, which was supposed to be released in 79, they scrapped that, put that on hold till 1981, and went into Moonraker. Yeah. And they did away with Jaws in Moonraker. I don't know if I like that. They made Jaws a good guy. I mean, I like that he actually defended Bond and had a change of heart, but he was supposed to be one of the heavies in For Your Eyes Only, and they made Eric this like really strong athlete in the Olympics who was a expert marksman in the Olympics, and they had a scene where he's picking up a motorcycle and throwing it at James Bond. It's like, how the hell does this guy have the strength unless he's juicing something fierce? No, it was written for Jaws. That would explain how Jaws, who we saw rip apart a van in The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977, that was the first movie with Jaws, and then he was in Moonraker, and that was it. Played by the great Richard Kiel, who was the first actor to play the Incredible Hulk before they scrapped him and replaced him with Lou Ferrigno. You see just one shot of Richard Kiel, all green. They thought he was too thin. When he's trying to save a girl in a lake and he's pulling like a tree stump out of the ground at a campsite, there's one overhead shot. And the director and creator of the TV version and the person that adapted it for TV from Stan Lee's comic book, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's comic book, was Kenneth Johnson, who was a writer and director, and he's the one that created the Bionic Woman, and he went on to do V with the lizard people from outer space, the epic miniseries that hit in 1983 and was rebooted in 2009 on ABC television for a couple seasons. So, I didn't talk about Flash Gordon. I just got a couple lines to tell you about Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon was a hero of the space adventure comic strip created and originally drawn by Alex Raymond. First published Sunday, January 7th, 1934. And the comic strip was inspired by and created to compete with the already established Buck Rogers adventure strip. So there you have it. And Buck Rogers, again, hit newspapers back on, as I mentioned, Monday, January 7th, 1929 versus Sunday, January 7th, 1934 for Flash Gordon. Now, to talk about the reason I did a supplement, I'm going to play some audio of actress Mary Stewart, who was one of the stars of The Last Starfighter, who was extremely kind and generous with her fans, and it was sold out. It was a packed house Saturday night, Saturday, October 16th, 2020. No, Saturday, October 15th, 2022. I was right the first time. And she was also there Friday, October 14th. And I didn't attend this for the screening of Night of the Comet. That was really her movie. The Last Starfighter was actor Lance Guest's movie, but she was the main love interest in it. Don't get me wrong, don't misunderstand. Mary Stewart was a huge star of that film, The Last Starfighter. But let's listen to a little bit of the trailer, and then I'm going to play some audio from the actress herself. Yeah, let's listen to that. Here we go.
Come on, Alex, they're here!
Alex Rogan,
had a dream.
You really are leaving here, aren't you?
To be as far away from here as possible.
You get your chance. When it comes, you gotta grab it with both hands.
That's what she said. I'm being immature.
It started with a game.
You gonna bust the record.
But it wasn't just any game.
You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
And then, one night...
Centauri's the name. We have to talk about a matter of utmost importance. Step into my office. I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy. Light years ahead of the competition.
Hey. Alex didn't find his dream.
Hey, look out! Oh, dear.
His dream found him.
Where are we? Welcome to Rylos, my boy.
A world on the brink of destruction.
You were recruited by the Star League to
defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
Of all the life forms, on all the planets, in all the galaxies.
Oh my God!
One has been chosen. Alex Rogan.
Alex?
I'm Max.
Is the last starfighter. For every Earthling who's ever imagined traveling beyond the stars.
Maybe there is a starfighter left.
I love you, Alex Rogan.
Comes the unforgettable story of one who made it. The Last Starfighter.
It's a good movie, and it looked great on the big screen, and it still holds up, in my opinion. And we have a comment from Gregory Pachano. He says, The Last Starfighter with the Music Man, Robert Preston. Great movie, and I couldn't agree more. It really is underrated. And I got to say, Catherine Mary Stewart looks fantastic to this day, and she was just so nice, so kind to everybody that said hey and asked a question. And she was signing autographs and all that good stuff. And I saw this movie actually in 2016 with the star Lance Guest, who plays Alex Rogan in that movie. There's some interesting trivia about that film. There was supposed to be a big video game released by Atari, and there's a huge credit in the end credits coming soon from Atari, The Last Starfighter, the game. I'll tell you in a second what happened there. But I'm going to try to play some audio from Catherine Mary Stewart that I couldn't play in Al's studio. That's the reason I'm doing this supplement. So let me see if I can get that queued up real quick. And I was going to play, I played this earlier with the fellows, this silly Submariner theme song from that 1966 cartoon. I guess I'll play it. It's just 18 seconds long. Let's listen.
Stronger than a whale, he can swim anywhere. He can breathe underwater and go flying through the air. The noble submariner, prince of the deep, will be where he's living demon. Lord Famer of Atlantis is the prince of the deep.
So silly. But I like some of the other theme songs. Doc Bruce Banner, delted by Gam. I'm not going to try to sing. And turns into the whole... I don't. They really catchy. Actually, the other songs were catchier and better. The Thor one was kind of lame, but I like the Iron Man and the Captain when Captain America throws his mighty shield. Anyway, but there are a lot of character actors also in The Last Starfighter. Like, well, you heard Robert Preston, who was much more than just a character actor. He played Centauri. He was the alien that actually recruited Alex Rogan, and in the story, this wonderful band of heroes, they're fighting oppression in outer space, and they set up a video game, The Last Starfighter, all over the universe, including, obviously, the Earth.
And it was intended to go in Las Vegas, Nevada, but it winds up in a trailer park. And Alex Rogan breaks the record. You're going to bust a record. He breaks the high score, and that summons someone from outer space to come down and encourage this person to fight in their reality against bad guys in outer space. Because obviously he's really good at the lasers and all that stuff. So, also in the cast, there was an actress named Meg Wiley in a very small role, of course a speaking role, in the trailer park, and she played an elderly woman. But she's best known for playing, to nerds like me, an alien with a huge pulsating head with a vein that vibrated in the very first Star Trek pilot titled The Cage, which was recycled as a regular Season 1 episode titled The Menagerie, the only two-parter in the original Star Trek series, by the way. And Meg Wiley was also in a classic Twilight Zone episode, a Christmas episode, titled Night of the Meek with Art Carney. Art Carney's character played an alcoholic with a heart of gold who literally gets transformed into a real Santa Claus. And that was one of the 6 Twilight Zones that was shot on videotape as opposed to being filmed. The other videotape Twilight Zone episodes were titled The Lateness of the Hour in 1960 with Inger Stevens, who committed suicide, sadly. Static, which was a good one about radio, old-time radio. The Whole Truth, which is about a lying salesman on a car lot. Night of the Meek, I just talked about. The Christmas episode 22, which had Jonathan Harris in the cast as a perverted doctor. And Long Distance Call, which had Bill Mumy, who many years later would play Will Robinson in Lost in Space. And he was communicating with his deceased grandmother. Really touching episode. Sometimes those Twilight Zones were really moving, really touching. And, of course, the writing by Rod Serling, the main writer, just could not be topped. And other notable actors in The Last Starfighter, and I'll show you the comic book. Marvel adapted it in a 3-issue comic book series and a magazine. They typically, Marvel in those days, would have a magazine all-in-one adaptation, and then they'd break it up into 3 or 4 issues, including Star Wars in 1977. That was 6 issues, and they had Treasury editions, which are huge. Huge. The largest comic book you'll ever find is called a Treasury edition. I have some in the background I'll hold up in a second, but I'm all over the place. Peggy Pope was a character actor also in The Last Starfighter, and she's best known as the Lush, or the alcoholic co-worker in the hit movie 9 to 5. And she also was in episodes of Bewitched and Barney Miller on TV. And sadly, Peggy Pope passed away at the age of 91 back on May 27th in the year 2020. And I did mention this with the fellows. Will Wheaton was in The Last Starfighter, who went on to be one of the main actors in Star Trek The Next Generation. And there's a funny younger brother, Alex's younger brother in The Last Starfighter. He kind of stealed the show in a couple scenes, and he has one line. I'm going to say a bad word here, just the S word. But when he's shocked, he goes, "What the shit?" And that got a big laugh at the Springs Cinema and Taphouse in Sandy Springs from the crowd. There were a lot of young people, by the way, in that sold-out crowd. A lot of parents took their kids, some grandparents took their grandchildren and the like, and the kids were just glued to that screen. They loved it. And again, the special effects, it looked like an Atari game. It didn't look that bad on the big screen. You'd think, oh, it's got to be dated. No, it actually works. And there was a lot of good comedy in that. But I loved Alex's little brother. What the shit? That was just a funny line. And as I said, I saw this in July 2016 with Lance Guest, who played Alex Rogan, at the Southern Fried Game Room Expo, which is a video game convention where they just have tons of classic 80s arcade games and into the 90s and 2000s, pinball machines from the 60s, 50s, up into present day by Stern Electronics, who's still making pinball machines to this day, and other things. So since there's a video game element to the story, a huge video game element to The Last Starfighter, at the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, they invited Lance Guest, and Catherine Mary Stewart said she's going to be in Houston coming up with Lance for that very reason at another video game convention. I forget the name of it, but I'll put it in comments there. If anyone wants to check it, I'll put a link in there. Now, I contend, now, Catherine Mary Stewart, when she hit in the 80s, there was another actress that I thought had a similar look, and I talked with her about this in private, and I said, look, I don't want to upset you. I'm sure you hear about this ad nauseum, that you looked a lot like Lori Singer, who's Mark Singer's sister, and she starred in Footloose with Kevin Bacon. And they kind of had a similar look. I think Catherine Mary Stewart's better looking.
She just is. And let me show you a picture on camera. That is she in a recent headshot. And if you're listening, I would encourage you to go to the YouTube channel, The Nostalgic, with a C, not nostalgia, The Nostalgic Podblast YouTube channel, or the Facebook group. Or just Google her. Google Catherine Mary Stewart. That might be the best thing to do for if you want a quick visual aid if you're just listening. Not just listening, but if you're listening. And she also was in Weekend at Bernie's and other things. And Lance Guest, who played the main hero in The Last Starfighter, was in Halloween 2. He was in Jaws 4, The Revenge, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he looks good, too. When I saw him in 2016 at the Cobb Waverly Renaissance Hotel for that Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Now, they called it the Game Room Expo. Now they've changed the brand and the name to the Southern Fried Gaming, like to play a game, shall we play a game, Expo. So, I think Catherine Mary Stewart would have been a much huger star, and I do appreciate her work and appreciate her kindness. Don't misunderstand. This is not a dig or an insult. It's just a fact. You know, I think she could have been like a Tom Cruise, had not Laurie Singer and some others at a similar look hit the scene. But The Last Starfighter was released in movie theaters on July 13th, 1984. That was a Friday, with a production budget of $15 million, but it made $29 million in North America alone. That's U.S. and Canada. So, hell, that's a $14 million profit in North America alone. And as I said previously, was it Star Wars money? No, obviously not. But it wasn't a bomb either. When I mentioned to Al Hardee, I invited him to go to the screening and some others, and I got some colorful responses from a lady friend and some others too that said, "Nah, you just hang out with your other blankety old blank offs." I was like, God. Anyway, I digress. But Al said, "Didn't that movie bomb?" That was one of the first things he said when I invited him to this screening. I said, "No, it didn't," and it did not. It made about $15 million, $14 million. So it was not a bomb. Now, getting to the video game that Atari was going to release to the public, but never did. Here's why they never did it. Where's that article? Here we go. I had this pulled up for you guys. There was a great game that Atari had already pretty much completed. The Last Starfighter was what it was called, based on the movie. They used a Motorola 68,000 processor. Sorry, guys and gals. A Motorola 68,000 processor, which was a piece of hardware that would become obsolete later in the decade. But here was the issue. The reason Atari pulled the plug on the game when it was pretty much completed was the faltering box office, which wasn't bad, but the studio execs, of course, greed is king, and they wanted a mega blockbuster. So the faltering box office, meaning it sort of tapered off in terms of ticket sales, ultimately led to that game's downfall. And with the price of a completed cabinet, meaning there literally would be wood cabinets, you know, like I can stand up, and there would be sit-down video games. Remember the sit-down versions? You would literally sit down and at a console and play a game. Like there was a Star Wars sit-down and Empire Strikes Back Atari sit-down game. Well, the price tag for this cabinet was about $10,000, and in 1984 money, that was a pretty high figure. And it was deemed by the higher-ups at Atari in Japan a bit too expensive for most arcade owners of the era to stomach. So that was that. The Last Starfighter arcade game, which was about 75% completed, had the plug pulled from it, even though that credit remains at the end of the film. Coming soon, The Last Starfighter. And there could have been a sequel to that movie. In fact, they set it up for a sequel, but of course, greed dictated that they do not do that. I'm going to hold it that they did not do a sequel. I'm going to hold up the Last Starfighter Marvel Comic Books adaptation for the camera. Let me see if I can play a clip while I'm doing that for the listeners. Let me see here. What did I have for y'all? And then we're going to talk a little bit about She-Hulk, and then I'll sign off. Well, I'll play a little bit. This is not related to The Last Starfighter in any way, but this is just some cool music. It's just a minute long or so. By Stu Phillips for the original Battlestar Galactica pilot. This is when Rick Springfield's character is taken out by the Cylons, who was Apollo's younger brother and Athena's brother, played by Maren Jensen. She was hot back then. Here we go. This will probably get flagged by the bots.
Issue 1. Here's issue 2. I like that alien. That was one of the bad guys trying to hunt down Alex on Earth. And then the third and final issue. Okay. Here's Rick Springfield about to get killed in Battlestar Galactica. Oh, I made it! And then you see that red eye. Wow! And his head explodes in his Viper ship. It's cool. What was that? And then Adama, Lauren Green. That was my son. That was my son, Mr. President. And then it cuts to Maren Jansen crying. Her mascara's running. Anyway. I just love the use of music in film and television. It really, like even Friday the 13th, as I talked about in my last solo show, that music for the movies by Harry Mandolfini, man, just really freaky stuff. It makes the scene so much more terrifying. So, I guess, I want to play, my gosh, the clips of Catherine Mary Stewart at the Q&A after the movie was shown. And let me find that. Geez, I'm getting all sorts of activity here. I'll address some of these comments in just a sec. Let me play for you now part 1. And I hope if the audio isn't clear, I'll stop it. I have not tried this. Let me see my notes here. Clip 138. Here we go. The movie is just concluded. And so here's the beginning of the Q&A session at the Spring Cinnamon Taphouse.
Wasn't that awesome? I mean, some of you younger kids, oh God, now I feel so old, but some of you younger kids, like when you watch movies and you look at the CGI, this is one of the movies you have to thank. Because this was one of the first films to actually use CGI along with Tron. But this was
Yay, Tron! I like that. I'm not making fun. There it is.
Don't make me come up there. Not only was it one of the first movies to actually use CGI, but this was the first movie to use extensive use of CGI, like in the background. So as the ship is flying and there's asteroids at the back of the ship, this was like one of the first films, well, it was the first film to do that. But it was definitely one of the first films to use CGI, because when you're watching like Star Wars and things like that, it's a lot of actual practical models. And I just kind of nerd out over that. I'm kind of an industrial, like magic type of girl. I love practical effects, things like that. So in case you didn't know, now you know some history. So without any further...
And the guy that did the effects for Last Starfighter, Apogee, A-P-O-G-E-E, I think is how it's spelled. That was a company I talked about with the fellas, Tom Williams and Al Hardee. John Dykstra, he did the special effects for the first Star Wars movie back in 1977. And then he went to do a project for Universal, Battlestar Galactica, that I played the music from a moment ago from the pilot. And that created a huge rift between 20th Century Fox, who had distributed Star Wars, and Universal. And Fox were the ones that were most upset. They said, you can't have laser guns. You can't. They had all these mandates when they didn't really have the power to dictate these things to Universal. You can't do this. You can't have... There have been lasers since Star Trek, since Lost in Space. I mean, Star Wars did not invent the laser pistol effect. So John Dykstra, his company, did the effects. And I'm telling you, I think they look great on the big screen because it looks like a video game. I mean, it actually is very atmospheric, and I thought it was fantastic. So here she is. Here's Catherine Mary Stewart taking to the stage.
Dude, let's bring the lady of the hour out. Yeah. Mary Stewart, yeah. Step into the spotlight. I know, it is very bright. Like, if we're squinting, I swear he's killing us. But it's like...
They have a huge spotlight on her. I mean, it's bright as hell.
So if you guys have any questions, come line on up. It can be Last Starfighter related. It can be...
Oh. That's end of scene on that. I tried to space these out. Here we go.
80s look, and
Hang on, let me get. This is a little choppy.
A very 80s look, and that was my sweatshirt. I mean, yeah. So I kept that afterwards, and yeah. But otherwise, I mean, most of the outfits I wore were pretty dirty by the end of it because I was either rolling around next to Silver Lake or getting blasted by some spacecraft landing. So yeah, the wardrobe wasn't as extensive as maybe in Night of the Comet, but yeah, I kept the stuff that I contributed. Oh, also I wore a little pendant with an M on it, and I think I kept that.
So the trailer park set was really fun. Now, was that on a studio set, or was that actually, did you were out in the wilderness filming in the studio, or in the trailer park?
I've never heard a trailer park being referred to as fun, but she's talking about the set anyway.
Yeah, no, that was a real trailer park. We were out north of LA in an area called Antelope Valley, and that trailer park, well, I'm not sure if the trailer park itself still exists, but that was a trailer park that they kind of kicked everybody out and dressed it up so it looked almost cartoony. But no, that really existed. And even today, people will drive out there and find like where, the top of the hill where the store was or the gas station or whatever that was. It doesn't look exactly the same, but that still exists. So no, that was, we didn't shoot anything except for the stuff where they're in the spacecraft and shooting at the aliens. That was done in the studio, but everything else was like on location. Yeah.
Do we have?
All right, now here's the next clip. It's a bunch of cute little girls. They must have been like 7 years old at the most.
So we know what Alex is going to go off and do, but it's funny as I'm watching it with modern sensibilities. I'm like, what does Max want to do? I mean, like, does she want to go up there? Like, does she have, like, what are her life plans? So,
I think at this point she's just like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, Alex and Max, they love each other, and they were, they made this promise to each other that they'd be together, for the rest of their lives through thick or thin. So I guess this is the thicker part. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this movie. It's so open for a sequel. And Jonathan Betchell, the writer, this was owned by Universal for like 30 years. And there's this rule now, after 30 years, if you want your property back that you wrote, you can get it back, and he did, and so he owns it again, and he has written a sequel, and he has been shopping it around for the last year or so. And what I love about that is that, like, Nick Castle is somewhat involved as well, who's the director. What I love about that is that it will sort of keep the integrity of the story and the feel of the movie. So often with sequels or remakes, which I'm not a big fan of in general, but if it's if there are different people involved, it just has a different vibe. And I feel like if there's a sequel made, it will sort of maintain the integrity of vibe, for a lack of a better word right now. They suggest that the Maggie and Alex characters will be involved somehow, so that would be super cool. But they have to do it soon because we're really getting old.
Oh no!
But I would love to find out what happens to Maggie.
Continue.
And they added all the stuff back.
At this point, I'm about to ask a question, and I put my phone, which is what you're hearing, it's phone audio from my iPhone, in my pocket. So the audio may be muffled here. It may be inaudible. If it is, I'll move on to something else. I can't wait to talk a little bit with you about the origin of She-Hulk and show some comics. But here is more of Catherine Mary Stewart.
It's like, oh my God. So his reaction after it's all over is kind of realistic, because he was like, but no, simple answers.
And I have one more question. As it was Robert Preston's last film, do you have any fond memories of working with him?
So again, I actually never had any scenes with him. I know, but when we did these pickup shots at the studio, he had just finished doing something, and I was coming in as he was leaving, and Nick introduced me to him, and I was so grateful that I got to meet him, because he's iconic. I knew who, you know,
Wow. Yes, he was iconic. Victor, Victoria, a bunch of other projects. Just song and dance man.
And then he kissed the back of it. He was like,
Now, the guy that asked the question, no disrespect, I'm not being mean here, but he had just watched the movie. Didn't he realize she didn't have any scenes with him? But maybe he meant at the wrap party, she might have had interaction with him down the line in the production of The Last Starfighter.
Nice to meet you. And he is exactly what you see on the screen. He's just this beautiful, warm, he has this aura of gold around him, I swear. And I was like, you know, early 20s, and he was whatever he was, maybe 70, and I'm like, I'm never washing my hand again. That was sort of the effect he had on me at that time. But I mean, Lance has some just wonderful stories about working with him, and what just a terrific guy he was. So at least I got to meet him, so I'm so pleased with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Chance from the Nostalgic Podblast podcast. This is one of my favorite movies. I think it's underrated. My question is, what was your favorite scene in the film? And describe the audition process.
Oh yeah, I love the audition. So, you know, it was, I was obviously a lot back then. It was all the regular people. I mean, I think they call it like
Inaudible. I'm struggling to take my phone out of my pocket. I apologize, folks. It gets clear here just a second. There we go. I asked her what her favorite scene was to shoot, and please describe the audition process. Here's her answer. And she talked about just now the Brat Pack when I interrupted.
I think that was their coinage. And so they were all there. And when I had the callback, Lance and I were actually put together for the callback, which was, that happens often. They pair you off, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's who you're going to be cast with. And so he and I kind of, you know, got together before we went in to see the director and producer, and kind of ran the lines and sort of talked about it a little bit. And we went in, and we were sort of, they sort of had us, you know, do the scene by the lake, but just kind of like make stuff up and be spontaneous and what it would be like. And they were basically, I guess, kind of checking our chemistry. But I just remember feeling very, very comfortable with him, and I think that they wanted a couple of actors that weren't super well known at that time. That's what I gather anyway. And because they didn't want the audience to be distracted by the fact that there was sort of super movie stars, you know, playing these sweet innocent kids in a little trailer park. And when I found out that I was cast with him, I was just so happy, because we just kind of like were in sync somehow. And he and I, before we started shooting, spent some time together just kind of talking about the roles and our relationship in the movie and everything. So that was really cool. So what was the first question? I forget now.
Favorite scene to film?
Oh, favorite scene for sure was, well, it's a sequence from where we're, you know, lying at the beach at Silver Lake, and he's screwing up because he's the beta unit, and I just love that scene so much. I think it's really funny, and he just can't say anything right, and then he gets shot, and that little spurt of green junk comes flying out, and I'm like, what? And then just the whole sequence, it has it all, you know, it has adventure, it has love, it has anger, and then we get into the truck and we peel off, and I love all that stuff, and I leap out of the truck, and he explodes in the background, and I look up into the sky, and I'm like, the wind is blowing through my hair.
So what happened is in that scene, I didn't set this up very well. Centauri puts a robot duplicate of Alex Rogan in his place at the trailer park so that the bad guys don't know there's a starfighter that's about to combat them in outer space. And so the funny scenes with her in the robot entail making out. Like, and you don't see this, but the robot refers to her sticking her tongue in his ear, and then he says something about her sexual urges, and then she slaps him. We don't see that on camera, and I should have asked if they actually filmed that and the scene was cut, but it's described in the story. And so, you know, she obviously doesn't know that it's an android version of Alex. Anyway, let me see here. It's my place.
Director and producer, and it's kind of ran the lines and sort of talked about it a little bit. Basically, I guess, kind of checking our chemistry, you know, playing these sweet, innocent kids in a little trailer park. And when I found out that I was cast with him, I was just so happy because we just kind of like were in sync somehow. And he and I, before we started shooting, spent some time together just kind of talking about the roles and our relationship in the movie and everything. So that was really cool. So what was the first question?
I know we just heard
scene to film.
Favorite scene for sure.
Sorry about the repeat.
Well, it's a sequence from where we're, you know, lying at the beach at Silver Lake, and he's screwing up because he's the beta unit, and I just love that scene so much. I think it's really funny, and he just can't say anything right, and then he gets shot, and that little spurt of green junk comes flying out, and I'm like, what? And then just the whole sequence, it has it all, you know, it has adventure, it has love, it has anger, and then we get into the truck and we peel off, and I love all that stuff, and I leap out of the truck and he explodes in the background, and I look up into the sky, and I'm like, the wind is blowing through my hair. I love it. And then my favorite line is, I love you, Alex Rogan. And then there's this big boom behind me. I loved that whole sequence. And yeah, I was just watching it. I didn't watch the whole movie just now, but I came in and I got to see that. I was just like, it was so much fun. And I think it's weird, but I was catching myself going, you know, sort of imitating myself on screen as I'm watching the whole thing. But that was my favorite sequence. And films, yeah, I mean, scenes.
So, speaking of like watching yourself and all of that, like, is that something, do you find yourself anytime you do a role, do you like to kind of watch afterwards and see the, you know, the fruit of your efforts? And, you know, because some people are like, no, I shoot it, I'm done, I don't ever want to see it. But, you know, what about you?
It's the weirdest thing because acting is so subjective, I think is the word. It's like everybody reacts differently to performances, and when I watch myself, I'm of course so.
That feedback is them, not me, by the way. The mics were kind of feeding back a little bit. Continuing.
Insecure, really, and critical, and if I can never watch myself on film with anybody the first time, and it always takes me a while to build up the courage to watch myself. Like, I feel like while we're shooting, some actors really like to watch as soon as they finish a scene. You know, they'll go and watch it over and, you know, sort of see what they want to do and everything. I feel like that's the job of the director. If he doesn't like what I'm doing, he should tell me. Otherwise, I've got to just sort of take a step back and not look at it in a judgmental way. I've got to just try to play things organically. But it is hard. I mean, it's easier to watch myself 40 years ago because it's like, oh, she's so young. He's so innocent. And nowadays I look at myself on film, and I always think of myself looking like that. And when I look at myself now, I'm like, oh my God, what happened?
Oh.
But I do eventually like to just watch, just to see how it all came out, I guess. And as time goes on, it is like easier to watch older stuff. But it's yeah, it's every actor is different that way, I think. Yeah.
And then what about now? What you're talking about, like seeing yourself now? Like, what are you up to? Are you working on anything that you can tell us about anyway?
Yeah. Right. Well, I just had a little movie. It's a small movie called Ask Me to Dance that just was released. What is this? October 7th. Yeah, in theaters, and I think they'll start streaming it somewhere. I'm not sure where. It's a romantic comedy, kind of around West Coast swing dancing, about these two characters, Jack and Jill, who are just looking for love, and they're perfect for each other, but they keep missing each other, kind of thing, and it evolves. But it's funny, it's sweet, it's just kind of like a nice healing little movie to watch. You know, it's been such a bizarre, kind of dark couple of years. It's a nice little movie to watch, just to get yourself out of that place and into a happy spot, you know? So look for that. It's called Ask Me to Dance. And also, oh, by the way, oh yes, another thing. I've also been really trying to pursue doing more things behind the camera. So I have a few scripts actually that I've been working on myself.
There you go, directing.
As like vehicles to direct. So I have a theater thing, I have a movie thing, and I have a television thing. So where I keep throwing stuff against the wall, hoping something will stick. But I will see. But yeah, that's what I've done a little bit of directing, and I just love it. So hopefully I can do more of that.
Yay.
Gotta diversify.
Hello. Okay, perfect. So my question for you goes back to the Trailer Park Gang. It seemed like you had a lot of amazing character actors from the 80s. I remember, like, so many of them, I knew their faces, and I couldn't place their names, but like I saw the woman who played Roz from 9 to 5 was in the movie. Can you talk about that at all? Do you have any specific memories of, you know, who your favorite people to work with from your Trailer Park Gang?
Well, I always just loved Vernon Washington, what day he played the
Otis?
Otis, thank you. He had sort of the perfect line, you know, grab on with both hands and hold on tight, that kind of a thing, which is sort of the theme of the movie itself. He was a lovely, lovely man. Sadly, he passed away a while ago now. All of those characters were so sort of specific, and it was like being in an acting class, you know, watching these character actors do their thing. Meg Wiley, who played my grandma, she was in the very first episode of Star Trek. That's a little bit of trivia for you. Yep. So she'd been around for a long, long time, and she was just lovely as well. I mean, it was really a labor of, so cliche, but really a labor of love, this movie. Nick Castle, the director, he was so empathetic to like young actors, but they were all, it was a smallish movie, you know, and they were all just wanting to make this beautiful little story the best they possibly could, and it was really a lovely atmosphere all the time on the set. I enjoyed every second of it. There was a lot of night shooting, which is a drag, like the stuff at the lake and everything, which and I was also on Days of Our Lives at the same time. So there were a couple of days where I was shooting at night and working on Days of Our Lives in the day, which was interesting. That was a challenging thing. And I'm not a big night shoot person, because my body clock never, ever adjusts. But
I think there's just one other little piece, folks.
Other than the fact that we shot a lot at nights, it was a lovely, lovely experience.
So my Next question is that both of these films came out in '84. Which did you shoot first?
Night of the Comet.
Night of the Comet or Last Starfighter? And if you knew from the first one that you were going into the next one?
We shot The Last Starfighter first, and no idea about Night of the Comet. Yeah, it was just, again, regular audition process. And I remember reading the script and thinking, oh, this is a great character for me, because I'd been cast as kind of the girl next door, you know, the sweet, innocent little thing. And when I read this script for Night of the Comet to play Reg, I thought, okay, I dig this. And in many ways, it was sort of more like who I am. I grew up with two older brothers and just kind of like vying for attention and trying to be tough and, you know, fit in with them. So I loved that character, and I was so happy to be cast in that as well. But yeah, it was a number of months later that Night of the Comet came along, but same general time. Yep.
Any final questions from the audience?
Are you still in touch with anybody from the movie?
Yeah, Lance and I are really, really good friends. I live in New York, he lives in LA, but he did a play on Broadway called $1 Million Quartet, and he was there for a couple of years. So we saw each other all the time then, and I especially pre-pandemic, went out to LA all the time, like several times a year for, you know, a couple of months at a time or whatever. And I would always see them. I would always go out there and kind of like find the cheapest place to rent that I possibly could, and never really cooked for myself. You know, I'd eat almonds or something for dinner. So Lance and his wife would always invite me over, and they're incredible cooks, and they would feed me and wine me and dine me. And so they were sort of like my little saviors when I was out in Los Angeles. But yeah, no, we're really good friends. We do lots of conventions together. He's just a great guy. Yeah. So yes, I do see him. And actually Nick Castle as well. And who else? Oh, Cameron Dye, who has a smaller role in it, but he's in the back of the pickup truck. And yeah, our paths cross for a lot of the cast and crew.
Yeah, I think that might be the end. Nope.
It's great.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, please give Catherine Mary Stewart a huge
Yay!
applause. It's been so amazing hosting you this weekend here at Springs. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and you guys are awesome. You've been so terrific, and it's been a real terrific experience just being here with you.
And we'll find more movies to bring her back.
Yes.
That would be great.
Guys, come on out. You got to keep supporting. We'll take suggestions of movies too, because we would love to do this, you know, year round. You guys seem to love it. If they can bring special guests, like, just come on out, visit us, and
The Springs, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Taphouse and Cinema Taphouse. Terry Kaiser.
I would love that.
Yeah, Terry Kaiser might come out. Bernie, that'd
Prop
be
him up.
great. Yeah, see him at conventions. He's the greatest guy ever.
Well, thank you guys so much. If you didn't get to meet her earlier, if you got here a little bit later, maybe if you're out there, maybe she'll
So
be there.
she was really, really sweet. I got a photo with her. I guess I'll show it. I don't want to put it on social media because I look so fugly. I guess I'll show you right now. What the hell? Let me check my monitor. While I'm getting ready to show you this, I noticed in Last Starfighter, I never noticed that an actress, Suzanne Snyder, I've got to confirm this. I think it was her just by visual. She was in the back of the truck with the other high school kids in the trailer park, and she went on to do Weird Science. She was the blonde, the girl that Michael Anthony Hall's character was courting. Let me see my monitor. Yeah, here's let's see this. I don't know if they're gonna show up. Yeah, I don't want to share this on social media because I look like crap. But there she is. She's gorgeous. She is really sweet, really nice. And I apologize for the audio glitches there. Now a lot of the feedback you heard was their mics, not mine.
Let's see what else I have for you now. Okay, so the She-Hulk finale was off the chain. Now, a lot of people are laughing when they hear She-Hulk. Again, I said at the top of the show, I'm not going to repeat myself. It's been around, the character, in the public eye, in comic books since November 1979 to compete with the television show. Well, this is a minor spoiler if you haven't seen the season 1 finale, but right in the beginning, it shows the typical Marvel MCU, Marvel Comics, Marvel Studios music. And then it cut to this, which was a parody of the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, Jack Colvin, who played Jack McGee, television show. And I'm going to play some audio of it. It's on YouTube. Someone put it on YouTube, but I highly recommend, if you have Disney Plus, to watch it. It was such a pleasant surprise because I'm a huge fan of that old show. And here's how it went. This is just audio only.
Jennifer Walters, Esquire, lawyer, millennial, searching for a way to balance a career and her personal life. Then an accidental dose of gamma-radiated blood alters her body chemistry. And now, when Jennifer Walters grows angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs. The creature is driven by rage and pursued by online trolls.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
She is provoked into a rampage that has landed her in prison, and now she is seen only for the raging spirit that dwells within her.
So they did a fantastic job with that parody. Again, it's visual, so you have to see it. But even down to this detail, they used my favorite version of that opening theme, and it only was used once in the original series, and it wasn't a part of the series at all. It was part of the second movie, the opening to the second movie from November 27th, 1977 on CBS. That was a Sunday night, the same month as the premiere of the very first Incredible Hulk television movie, 2-hour movie titled The Incredible Hulk, which was written and directed by Kenneth Johnson. Alan J. Levy was the director of A Death in the Family, the second movie. And they used that music, which was not the music of the regular 1-hour television series that lasted 5 seasons, starting in 1978. But I'm going to play while I show some comics. I'll probably get flagged for this. This is the instrumental version of that opening to A Death in the Family, which was a longer opening sequence. And by the way, the original narrator, I mentioned this with the fellows earlier today, was Ted Cassidy, better known as Lurch in the original Addams Family television show. He was the narrator on The Incredible Hulk, and sadly, he passed away in 1979 of a heart ailment. He had open heart surgery. And I've seen recent interviews with Kenneth Johnson, the director and creator of the television adaptation for CBS, and he said, I decided to keep his narration. The CBS said, do you want to change it? And he said, no, we're going to keep it throughout the rest of the series. And also, Ted Cassidy, Lurch from the Addams Family, the original Addams Family, did the voice of the creature, the growling, the brrr. And they replaced him with another actor, very well known. He played Hammer on BJ and the Bear. He was the cop in The Cable Guy, starring Jim Carrey. Sing us a song. Charles Napier. He took over the role of just doing the growls, not the narrator part, but the growls. But here's the original opening of the music while I show some more comic books. By the way, if you're watching video, I don't know if you know this, for a while in the comic books in the 1980s, She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, joined the Fantastic Four, replacing the Thing, the pile of rocks, the monster man. Ben Grimm is his human alter ego in the comics of the Thing. And she replaced him for a while. And there were some really cool stories by artist-writer John Byrne, who brought back the comic book. The original comic book lasted 25 issues. While I was playing that opening from She-Hulk Season 1, Episode 9, the season finale, I showed the last issue of the first Volume 1 Marvel comic, and there it is. It's a double-sized issue. It only lasted 25 issues.
Well, John Byrne brought the character back. This ended in 1982, by the way. Once the television show on CBS finished its 5-season run, the comic book was canceled. I don't know if there's a coincidence there. Probably is. It served its purpose. Marvel struck first with the rights to a female Hulk character, so they didn't need the comic. Also, the sales weren't very good, but I don't think they were horrible either. So, flash forward in time to, this is 1983. This would have been January 83 street time. April 83 cover date, always 3 months ahead for distribution purposes. It's like the carton, the date on a milk carton, so that someone in the store knows to pull the old milk before someone buys a rotten or expired carton of milk. Same thing with comic books. That's why they're 3 months ahead, so the guy stocking the rack or the newsstand knows to pull old issues. So anyway, this was the first comic book I'm showing on camera where the Incredible Hulk and She-Hulk were in the same comic book and interacted, even though of the Incredible Hulk, because they interacted in her first issue where she's injured. She gets her powers in the comic book by a blood transfusion after hitmen shoot lawyer Jennifer Walters, who's taking on the mob in the courtrooms. So the mob tries to take her out with hitmen. And but in the first episode of She-Hulk on Disney Plus, they see a spaceship. Now, I'm going to give you a little spoiler. We don't ever learn what that spaceship's all about. I'm sure we will find out later in a movie. That wasn't there for no reason. There's never a plot hole that's left by MCU and by Marvel Studios. So we'll find out who that was. It might relate to Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't know. But there was a spaceship that caused Jennifer Walters and Bruce Banner in their car when they're driving to go off the road off a canyon. And then her blood interacts with his, and that's how she gets her powers in the Disney Plus series. And but in 1989... Actually, it was drawn in late 88, hit the streets in early 89. Volume 2 of She-Hulk, titled The Sensational She-Hulk, hit comic book shops and newsstands. And John Byrne was the artist and writer. He wrote most of them, but he didn't draw most of them. He drew a lot of them, but I just love his style of art, always have. And look, even from the get-go, she's breaking the fourth wall, as she does in this Disney Plus series. She looks at the reader, and look what she's saying. She's like, all right, you get another chance. My first book, you didn't buy it. It was canceled. Now here's another shot. And this second edition of She-Hulk lasted 60 issues, and she even references this first issue of Volume 2 in the last issue, where she's kind of pissed that the book is canceled again. Early on in the run, Madcap, who's a character I created for Marvel Comics, I called this character Happy, a demented happy face that could drive people insane with his stare. I submitted it to Marvel Comics before Disney owned it, full disclosure. Marvel Comics chose to credit a writer named Mark Gruenwald, who died in 1996, as being the co-creator or writer that created this character Madcap. No, I submitted in color. I'm not going to make this about me. I've already done another YouTube video about it titled Madcap. I created Madcap, and I did. There was a contest back then where Marvel solicited readers to submit ideas for new characters, and they said you'll be given the same treatment as a professional comic book writer and artist. Send it to us and we'll have a contest. And they had a book, the Marvel tryout book at that time, which someone legitimately won. I think Mark Bagley, and he became an artist on The Amazing Spider-Man, and he won the art portion of the contest. But they still, even after that contest was won, they were still mining fans to send in ideas. I talked to Jim Shooter about that in August 2021. And I have that audio that I've published, his response. And he says, it doesn't surprise me. I told those guys not to do that. Basically, he says, I told those guys not to take ideas uncredited. And then he was the face. He was like the Stan Lee of Marvel Comics in the 1980s. He was like the editor-in-chief. He was the guy in charge, vice president. He was calling all the shots. But I don't think he had anything to do with my idea being taken. And it was the same colors. It was purple and yellow. A purple-yellow costume, demented with jagged eyes, drawing that I submitted to them. It's probably somewhere in a file if it hasn't been destroyed and ripped up by now. But anyway, so I created Madcap. All they did was change the name from Happy to Madcap, but they kept the same properties. And at first, he was introduced in a Captain America issue. I think it's Captain America 30... I should know by heart, shouldn't I? 306, I think. They made the ability to drive people insane done with a gun that he had instead of a stare. But then in the very next issue, when he came back 2 issues later in Captain America, I think 307 was his first appearance. In 309, the second appearance, it's revealed, oh, I don't need the gun to drive you insane. Just look into my eyes. And he tries to drive She-Hulk insane in this very issue that's on camera. But it's true. I created which would become Madcap, but I named him Happy, a demented happy face. Same costume, same everything, half purple, half yellow, just to this day. Kind of irks me. But let's get back to the happy stuff. Some other examples of the zanier side of She-Hulk, going back to the 1989 to 1994 second volume, Sensational She-Hulk. Just going to show some covers on camera. Those listening, it was just humor-based. Think Mr. Roper on Three's Company, taking a jab at Helen Roper, and then him looking into the camera. Same kind of thing. Look here. So here she is with the character Mole Man, who was the first villain in Fantastic Four issue 1, which hit the stands in August of 1961 with a November 1961 cover date. First villain of the Fantastic Four in the very first issue. That successful comic book ushered in the Silver Age, the Marvel Age of comic books for Marvel. Of course, the Silver Age could also be DC, but the Marvel Age of comics began in August of 1961, street date, during the dog days of summer in that year. And here's another cover John Byrne drew, and it's a parody on the Vanity Fair cover with Demi Moore when she was pregnant. But look, it's a beach ball. So that's an idea of some comedy. If you're just listening, it's just a picture of She-Hulk with a big bulge in her belly, and it's not that she's pregnant. It's a beach ball that blends in because it's a green beach ball that matches the color of her skin. So kind of interesting, funny stuff. And then this comic was featured in the last episode of season 1 of She-Hulk in the writer's room. Minor spoiler, but it was so inventive. If you haven't seen it, She-Hulk totally breaks the fourth wall well beyond anything Deadpool ever did, and she shatters the Disney Plus menu and crawls into a making of Marvel show or special, and she confronts the writers of She-Hulk. Hey, this is my show. What are you doing with my character? And they also take a shot at some of the internet trolls, as they did in that opening sequence, the parody of the Incredible Hulk Bill Bigsby opening, where she's drinking coffee, 1970s style hairdo, attire, and computer, and it says She-Hulk is stupid on her little old school computer screen, and she types back, "You're stupid." And I thought that was just classic. And they just did a fantastic job. I'm repeating myself here. So I think that's... Oh, here's the last issue of She-Hulk. I'll show you. Issue 60. Yeah. February 1994 would be the cover date. So that would have been November 1993 when it hit the street. But look, she's chastising the people for failing to give her a long run in her second shot at her own comic book. But of course, after that, after 1994, She-Hulk returned, and she's joined the Avengers, like I said, the Fantastic Four. But now I want to play that music. I'll probably get flagged by the bots, and while I do that, for anyone watching, this is my all-time favorite Incredible Hulk classic TV show magazine cover from Pizzazz magazine, which was published by Marvel Comics. It didn't last long. I was a subscriber when I was a little kid, and I just friggin' love that comic, but I love that cover. So let me play a little bit of the November 27th, 1977, without narration, music that they used in that sequence in Season 1, Episode 9 of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And hopefully the bots will not get me in trouble. Joseph Harnell scored this music. Joe Harnell.
Dr. David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have.
Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation alters his body chemistry. And now when David Banner goes angry or outraged, a startling metamorphosis occurs. You know the rest.
There's the Lonely Man, what they call the end credits. This part, that's called the Lonely Man theme. I just love that. I'm a total geek and a spaz, but I just think that was a very unique version because it was a longer opening with longer narration. I played it at the very beginning of this live broadcast. Let me see if I still have it pulled up. I might want to end with that too as I sign off here. So I just showed you some, and there's if you're looking on camera in the very background, there's by John Byrne, a graphic novel, The Sensational She-Hulk. I think it was from 1987. It predates the 1989 relaunch that John Byrne headed and wrote and drew in the comic books for Marvel Comics. But and I love Tatiana, who plays the main character, Jennifer Walters, in She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and her acting is just phenomenal in everything she does. And I think she might be a smoker. This is really stupid because who cares about a dream? But before I saw the finale, like a few days before, I even texted my friend Jeff Logan about this. I had a dream that I was filming a scene. Yeah, dream on. This will never happen. I was filming a scene with Tatiana for She-Hulk, and we're watching the dailies. Like you heard Mary Stewart say how some actors like to watch the dailies, and she thinks that's the director's job. Well, we were watching the dailies, and she starts holding my hand, rubbing my shoulder, then I wake up. It wasn't a sex dream. It was more like an affection dream, and it sucked. I woke up right in that moment. And then in the opening of the season 1 finale, she's dreaming. She dreams that whole parody of the Bill Bixby series. I thought it was strange. It's like a psychic moment, or maybe a psycho moment. And I'm not a stalker. I'm not going to stalk this woman. She just got married. But in my dream also, if you look at her lips, she has cracked lips. I said to myself, she must be a smoker. And in my dream, I said, you might want to think about not smoking cigarettes because it can really damage your skin around your mouth. And then she just looked at me in my dream. And of course, it's not real. I'm not crazy. I'm just describing a dream. And then I noticed in the season 1 finale, it must have been an inside joke. I noticed, I looked online to see if she smoked. My buddy says, "Do you think she smokes?" My friend Jeff. And I said, "I don't know." And I just did a Google search, Tatiana She-Hulk, does she smoke? And then you see all these images from other projects where she's deeply inhaling and smoking. And, so in She-Hulk, when she confronts the writers, her character, she walks into the house, or the movie house, or not the movie house, the part of the studio in Burbank, California that houses the writer's room for She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And she goes into the door as She-Hulk. I mean, she walks through the door. She doesn't smash it, just walks in, and on the door it says no smoking. So I thought that might be an inside joke. Maybe someone else has told her to not smoke. And maybe she doesn't. Maybe she quit. I don't know. Anyway, that show is just very, very enjoyable. So I guess I'm going to sign off. What was I going to sign off with? Oh, yeah, I guess I'll play that long opening of The Incredible Hulk that I played at the top of the show to come full circle. And again, this was just a supplement to play the audio that I recorded of Mary Catherine Stewart after the screening we had at the Springs Cinema and Tap House in Sandy Springs, Georgia on Saturday, October the 15th, 2022. But here is the original, November 27th, 1977, A Death in the Family opening, with Ted Cassidy narrating. Oh, shit, I pulled the wrong one. Excuse my language. Here it is. Jeez Louise, forgive me. Is this it? Nope. But that wasn't necessarily a mistake. I like the noises in that. It sounds like a buzzsaw going, like a saw. I always thought that was part of the sound effects of the opening credits, but it's actually friggin' music. And it was similar to the music that this guy, Joe Harnell, had scored for the Bionic Woman Fembot episodes. Part of the Fembot theme had that same kind of sound. And it was right around the same time the original Fembot stories, a 3-part crossover with the $6 Million Man, aired in Halloween 1976. Yeah, part 2 aired on Halloween night on the $6 Million Man. Part 1 was a week before There was 3 nights for that on Wednesday night. Bionic Woman was on Wednesday night. $6 Million Man was on Sunday night. And then part 3 was a Bionic Woman episode. And I just like that little weird sound. You know what I'm going to do? I have this on my phone. I'm going to play a little bit of that. I'm really going to have my freak flag flying today. But here's a little bit of that Fembot theme where you hear that sound. It sounds like a buzzsaw. It was a neat, unique sound that this guy, Joe Harnell, put in some of his music. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. This is the Fembot, which were female robots like Westworld. It was a knockoff on Westworld or Stepford Wives. Let me shut up and you can hear that buzzsaw sound. I think it's here now. Right there. Right there. You hear that weird sound? I'm going to play the damn thing again. Listen for it here in the Death in the Family Incredible Hulk opening. Buzzsaw. Right there. That was like from the Fembot music from a few months before. All right, I'm going to sign off. I really sound like a weirdo now. Oh, tune in to Retro Music Cuts on fistfulofradio.com. It's a music show, Sunday night, Saturday night, Friday night. And then this show, the Nostalgic Podblast, airs Saturdays and Sundays 2 to 8 p.m. on fistfulofradio.com and on Apple Podcasts. Tune in anywhere you want to hear it. We're there. And have a very happy and safe Halloween season. My God, I've got almost 2 hours. Thanks again to Catherine Mary Stewart for being so nice to me and to all of her fans.